We now recognize the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Lynch, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also want to thank the witnesses for their courageous service and your willingness to come before the committee here today. I also want to offer my condolences again to Ambassador Stevens and his family, Tyrone Woods and his family, Glenn Doherty of Massachusetts and his family, and Sean Smith. These were American heroes, and they were our very best. I don't want that part to be overlooked. These individuals were regarded as our very best, including Ambassador Stevens. Without question, I think his opinion and the respect that his experience and authority in matters, all matters in Lebanon, Libya, and not only in Tripoli but also in Benghazi was unquestioned, I think, and it showed in the deference that others gave him to those decisions. I thought the ARB report especially did single out some areas where I thought they were trying to identify where the decisions that were made may have been deficient, and they do identify at page 30. They talk about the Bureau of Diplomatic Security and NEA, the Near Eastern Affairs, and at Post. There appeared to be a very real confusion over who ultimately was responsible and empowered to make decisions based on policy and security considerations. They go on further to say the DS Bureau showed a lack of proactive senior leadership with respect to Benghazi, failing to ensure that the priority security needs of a high-risk, high-threat post were met. And at the same time, with attention in late 2011 shifting to a growing crisis in Egypt and Syria, the NEA Bureau's front office showed a lack of ownership of Benghazi's security issues and a tendency to rely totally on diplomatic security for the latter. The Board also found that Embassy Tripoli leadership, saddled with their own staffing and security challenges, did not single out a special need for increased security for Benghazi. Now, what they point to in the next couple of paragraphs is they thought that the result, that the special mission Benghazi extension, that this was a temporary residential facility not officially notified to the host government, even though it was also a full-time office facility, resulted in the special mission compound being accepted from office facility standards and accountability under Secure Embassy Construction and Counterterrorism Act of 1999. Mr. Nordstrom, your point exactly. And the Overseas Security Policy Board, OSPB. So what they're saying is because there was an extension made, that there was a lowering in expectation there, that the resources for physical security and also the personnel assignments needed at that was not given an adequate priority, and that it was left to diplomatic security in some cases to make those repairs. Is that something that you see as being a weak point in this whole process that allowed Benghazi to be ill-prepared for the attacks on September 11th?
I do. As I said, I think that what still remains unseen is who made that decision to go ahead and assume that this is going to be a temporary facility. At one point, in fact, I was told by colleagues in OBO and DS that the recommendations that we wanted to make, the upgrades, both in Tripoli and Benghazi, would not be made. They forwarded us the way forward documents that we discussed in October. And they said, and I quote, "It's my understanding that M, Undersecretary for Management, agreed to the current compounds being set up in occupied condition as is." The ARB in particular found it interesting at my reply, which was in February of 2013. I requested, "Is anything in writing? If so, I'd like a copy for post so we have it handy for the ARB." That's 8 months before the attack.
Right.
I got no confirmation as to who made those decisions, nor did I get a copy of that decision.
And so the status was still in limbo at that point? I know there was some discussions with Mr. Langford earlier, the gentleman from Oklahoma, that
My understanding was the facility, again, the types of facilities are whether or not you're sole occupancy of the building, or are you a partial occupancy of, say, a commercial building, or if you are in a building which is owned by the host nation. Well, clearly we were the sole occupant, and that's the standards. It's very clear, and it's based on our threat and those standards. We did not meet any of those standards with the exception of perhaps the height of the wall.
Okay. Thank you. My time has expired.